If you're moving from, a service industry job to sitting in front of a computer and then operating, that's a big shift. And you'll know how hard the job was previously when you were working in fast food or you were working in that retail location. But now you just get a chance to sit in front of a computer and do what it is that you've been wanting to do. But you still have to interact with people. And so you carry that over. And I think it's really important on how you interact and how you take care of people as you're working.
If you're ready to unlock momentum, you're in the right place. I'm Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, and this is where CIOs come to grow. So very excited to have Collin Hill here with us, the CIO of Indianapolis and Marion County. And so some things we're going to touch on today, getting involved in local government, public service, really think about culture shift and behavior shift, even at a tactical level, can start to move the needle. And a lot of those things that have built up over the years of just gaining experience as a leader oftentimes come to a pivotal point where you've got to make that decision one way or the other. And as you look back on it, it becomes that really crucial decision that you made that sort of led in the right direction for the rest of that career, that opportunity at your position in that organization. So really important to have that background as a leader to really build up to making the right decisions at the right time. And then really, from a service perspective, IT people, we're often, very focused on the technology, the ones and zeros, but Collin brings up a really good point that having background in the service industry to help with human interaction is really important, even for technologists. So with that, let's get into some conversation here with Collin Hill.
Thanks, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be a part of your podcast. I know I get to be one of the first few guests, so that's pretty exciting. In my time, I had run into Project Brilliant when I was at IU and changed the team from waterfall to agile development. It was really rewarding, so it's really great to kind of circle back and be here with you today.
Well, and with that, any advice you'd give your younger self?
It's interesting. I consider myself kind of a serial employee. So I've worked at places for 8 years, for 5 years, for 7 years. I've stuck at one place for a long time, and there are no regrets there. But there was a point at IU where a friend of mine had tried to recruit me to the city county, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go work for a city. That sounds terrible. And so I didn't do it for probably 6 to 8 months. And in retrospect, if I could have told my younger self, if I got the opportunity to do that, I should have jumped at it the first moment that I had. I had kind of been moved at IU into a situation where I was in a dark room with 8 developers, and it just was so small, the focus, it just wasn't doing anything for me. But I tried to toughen it out and didn't really enjoy it. And then so when the opportunity came up the second time, I was like, I am absolutely applying for this position. And it was honestly the best thing that I've ever done. It's been the most rewarding experience, as I mentioned before, moving and working in local government at the city county. So I guess it would be, hey, go ahead and jump on that right away. New opportunities are good. You never close the door. And honestly, the best advice that I ever got came from kind of like a sideways way of doing it. Someone walked up to me, and for those people that know me, I'm very much an introvert, but I talk a lot for my job and can do it. I've gotten accustomed to it. But I like to go into my fortress of solitude. But someone told me, he's like, Collin, you don't network very much, do you? And I said, no, I do a good job. Why do I need to network? Why do I need to get to know other people? And he's like, you should really look into that. It was almost like a kind of a stab, right? Like there was this thing like, you aren't doing this and you should do it. It felt he was trying to help me in the moment, but I just felt like almost insulted by it. I was like, but I do a really good job. I feel like people should notice how good of a job I do. Networking isn't about that, right? It's about getting to know people and understanding what they're experiencing, going through and sharing those experiences and learning from other people and developing relationships that can get you through all sorts of different times. And maybe it's things that'll help your career. Maybe it's things that'll help your personal life. But I wish I would have listened to that a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's a really good one. I mean, it's a lot about communication, right? Learning and having empathy for people in their situation, trying to understand, what they're going through. And I imagine, especially in government service and public life there, it's a lot of that, trying to understand those different groups and agencies and constituents and what their needs are. And so, yeah, that idea of getting better at networking and just being able to communicate effectively and taking information from other people and make sense of it, and then do that across a larger group of people and sort of look for themes that can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most interesting things about the city county is to add into that is where we sit, ISA, we don't necessarily report to the mayor's office. We don't report to any one specific. We're an independent board, and we have a bunch of elected officials on that, mayoral appointees, council appointees. So I have that as a governing body for what I do. But in reality, if the mayor and the mayor's office asks for something, I'm definitely there trying to help out and make sure they're getting what they need. Additionally, we have all the judges, you have all the county electeds, you have all the appointed people, and it's almost, instead of having one boss, I have like 80 different bosses. So being able to navigate those conversations and understand the differences of what people need or what are they looking to do as an agency, as a central IT agency, has been really interesting. And being able to communicate and talk with people is certainly important.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, we deal with a lot of companies out there, private companies, but when you think about public work like you're doing, like you said, you might have to deal with like 80, 90 different bosses. It's a different animal, right? And I often think about it like being, it's government. They must be smaller and less complicated than these big corporations, but I don't think they are.
Yeah, I mean, that is a soapbox and a hill that I would die on, to say that it's very much more complicated than any private sector group that I've ever been. Outside, I haven't been in very large companies, so maybe that's a difference there, but it is very complicated. It's a bureaucratic machine for a reason, so that someone can't unilaterally decide to do something. So navigating through that to get things done, to move things forward is really challenging and exciting, and it really gets the creative juices flowing, because there's always a way forward, but who do you have to work with in order to make that happen? To meet someone's needs is the challenge, and finding that pathway is what really it gets me. So I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny we think about corporate politics, but this is real politics, right? Truly actual politics.
Yes, some of that there. So we had the lowercase p politics is how I refer to it. Like, that is always happening, but there is capital P politics that is always on the mind of most everyone who's working there, as far as how that's impacting day-to-day operations or the long haul. So being a part of elections and helping with the election board and the clerk's office in elections has been a really rewarding experience as well, to see what those things actually look like, to help them make sure that those are going off without any hitches is very important, particularly like from the phone system to making sure election night reporting is working. That's kind of where our team has been involved, certainly helping with conversations to understand what that security looks like. There's just so many different aspects to the role in local government. Like, it's always changing, and it's always something to learn. I've never stopped learning since I've been there. And I like to admit that when I don't know something, because it's an opportunity for growth.
Well, I know it is a pretty complicated animal that most of us outside of it, I'm sure, don't have full understanding or respect for what goes on and all the behind the scenes things. But I know one thing you're passionate about is that people ought to get involved with local government. So as Americans, being in a republic and a democracy, like really understanding how that works and getting involved is something that's important to you. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So when I came to local government, I didn't really know what local government did, right? I knew that there were parts and pieces of it, and certainly have interacted. Property taxes, had to go file things at the recorder's office occasionally. There were different pieces to it. There was, obviously, I knew that local government was involved in elections, particularly at the clerk's office, because I'd seen that on TV, and it had looked challenging, and it looked pretty scary. And obviously I knew the mayor was involved doing all these different things. And obviously in Indianapolis, it's potholes. Local government's responsible for potholes. And no matter who's in charge, there's going to be a problem with the potholes. It's kind of one of those funny things, but that's about all I knew. And so getting in there and moving over there and finding just how vast and expansive and how much people are trying to help their neighbors, trying to make sure that there are services available for other residents and the public within Indianapolis and Marion County, has been so rewarding. And to see how complicated it all is to make things work, to make things happen, and the different branches of government and how they all work together, it's been, for me, it's been really rewarding. But I honestly think that everyone should, at least some point in their career, probably early, is hop over to local government and work there for a couple of years. You don't have to make a career out of it, but it does two things for you. In local government, you can get whatever responsibility that is that you want. If you show that you're competent, you will take on whatever it is that you need to take on in order to serve, your department or your neighbors, to make those things happen. And you can get big, huge projects that you're running that are going to have dramatic input on like your community. And I think that's rewarding. Obviously, as a technologist, the complexity of it is more complex than anything I've ever been a part of. How you keep all those systems and applications and operations running, because it is truly a 24/7, 365 operation. When you think about the police department, the fire department, the courts, like these are all things that have to keep going in order to maintain civic services, right? And it just gives you a different perspective on how important, how connective technology is. But really, if it's just not a technologist and you're going into it, you're going to learn more about local government and you're going to understand what it is that these folks are doing for you day in and day out, and gives you a little bit more respect for it and the job that other people are doing. And then, you understand when you're complaining about what's been happening in your community, you'll have a better understanding of it and maybe be able to find a common ground or way forward easier.
Yeah, that's great. And especially to come at it, with the technology background, I'm sure that's going to be helpful too, because then you get into it and you probably have some good ideas about how you can solve problems. And not everyone's a technologist in there to start with, but a lot of the problems get solved with technology. Bringing that background into it can be really helpful too. So if you're a technologist out there, looking to make an impact, that could be a great way to do it, is get involved in local government. So that's awesome.
I hope you do. Whoever's listening to this, please join us in local government. It's great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, speaking of background, and as we get into, different roles, and as you're looking to hire people, you had a really interesting thought on, we've had some other guests that talked about getting into technology careers without going to college, and others were adamant that, hey, you really should go to college and get those basics under your belt, that kind of stuff. And you've got a little bit different twist on what makes for, great, responsible employees. So kind of curious to hear more about that.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. So this may be a little controversial, but I feel that the best employees are those who have worked in the service industry, whether it's food, restaurants, heck, hotels, whatever it is, where you have served other humans in getting their needs met, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's the Best Buy and computer hardware. So where you have experienced that someone has a need and you're trying to fulfill that need, that is something that I look for all the time. So I've spoken with other people about this, and just having people who are service-minded, who want to make sure and ensure that someone is benefiting from their interaction with you, I think is so instrumental, particularly in technology, because we're trying to understand what people want. We're trying to understand what people need, not necessarily what they want. They're telling you what you want. And so how do you dig deeper? How do you get a little bit more curious so that you're actually fulfilling the need that people have in a way that they're going to be satisfied with it? I think having that service industry background is so important. I ran restaurants. Heck, I delivered pizza at some point in my life. And it's really been fundamental to how I look at service and interacting with people and making sure that their needs are met. I will say that even one of the questions I ask in interviews all the time is, outside of technology, what is one job that you've had that has impacted the way that you go about your career? And really, I'm fishing for someone to say that they worked in the service industry to hear how that impacted them, to see if they did it, because I think it's a really hard job. And if you're moving from, a service industry job to sitting in front of a computer and then operating, that's a big shift. And you'll know how hard the job was previously when you were working in fast food or you were working in that retail location. But now you just get a chance to sit in front of a computer and do what it is that you've been wanting to do, but you still have to interact with people. And so you carry that over. And I think it's really important on how you interact and how you take care of people as you're working.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I love that take, and great observation that, as we think about things in the book I wrote, looking at products, teams, and leaders, I think this one sort of fits in that value delivery side of things with products, and how do we satisfy the customer, and really coming at it with that right mindset about, how do we understand their needs? How do we solve for the problems that they care about, things like that. And really thinking about it from how do we interact even when they're in a difficult situation, or, when tension is high, or, the stakes are high, things like that. How do we actually interact with those people and help them, right? Even if they're maybe upset or, having some issues that day, we got to figure out how to solve their needs, right? And especially if you're in the public sector, you don't really have a choice. You're the government, you got to help solve problems that people have issues with. So yeah, that's a great take.
That is a really excellent point when you bring up on dealing with people who may be irate. One of my first jobs that I did, the company went down because of the server equipment. And I had the CEO of the company and in the technology director's office, and I'm sitting there trying to get things back up and going. And he is barking mad. Like, he was yelling, screaming, and just going nuts. And I walked out and I said, I really understand that this is impacting business across the board. We are doing everything in the calmest voice possible. We're doing everything we can to get it up and going. And you can yell at us, but it's not going to help us get it up and going faster. We'd love to debrief after, but right now, just help us get this up. And he said, okay, I understand. And he walked away. And so the ability to handle that came from my service industry experience. And so, to your point, that is being able to be calm and stay within yourself in those situations that are hard is really important at times. It's been very helpful in my career. And I do look for it in other people. To say that people can't be in technology without it being in the service industry isn't true, right? I think people can come from a different background and be successful. I just think it helps in certain areas within the technology space.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, people think about service industry. A lot of us, when I hear that, I often think about, food service, that kind of stuff. But there's certainly other options, but really about dealing with customers, right? Like you said, it could be a Best Buy or delivery pizzas or whatever it is, but there's different aspects there. And it makes me think about, like, have I been in the service industry? And I go back to one of my very first jobs. My grandparents owned a bait shop on the Mississippi River. And I worked there when I was little, peddling worms and like fishing lures and that kind of stuff. And so the best part of that, though, is the store was called Booze and Bait. One of the best store names ever. Right?
Yeah, that's really good. I might have to franchise that. I don't know.
It was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, speaking of that, as we think about that, some of that culture shift that we go through and helping people solve their problems, understanding their needs, and like you said, having that leadership call to really come at that, even when someone's irate, really being able to come at that with a calm head and a soothing voice to sort of calm the nerves and say, hey, we understand the problem. We're trying to help you out. The more you can help us help you, that's going to be great. And that starts to get into some of that culture and behavior as a leader. And so kind of curious to hear from you on, is there a situation you've been in where you had to use some of those skills and really think about culture and how to shift that? I'd love to hear your story about that.
Yeah, I have a good story regarding that, probably a little bit more from the security side than straight technology, but I think it applies. At the city county, we had been working at ISA to set up security awareness training. It's pretty ubiquitous throughout the private sector, but it had proved a little challenging with the complexity of the environment to get something off the ground where everyone's aware of their responsibility and risk posture at the city and the county. And in doing so, we had set up initial training the previous year, and that had gone pretty well. It wasn't a requirement. It was just sort of an optional training that we were trying to get buy-in for people and build a culture. And one of the reasons that I had been put into the CIO position was my cybersecurity background, that I was a champion of it and that it was important. And so together with our CISO, we had worked on the security awareness training. It was ready to go. And that went out that first year before I was in the CIO role. And then my first year in the CIO role, we decided that it was time to do phishing training after doing more security awareness training. And so the first fish campaign goes out, and it's an email. I don't remember what the email was about at all, but I suddenly received phone calls and emails with people completely irate about what we were doing. People had gotten scared about what that email was. They deleted it, turned off their computer, that type of thing. And so it wasn't, obviously that's not the culture you want. And so we're trying to build and change that culture to be like, oh, this looks suspicious. Let me just hit this button and see if it's real or not, instead of getting scared or worked up about it. But I had received one particular email that I may have to frame someday had told me that I needed to stop playing games and to do actual work instead of spending money on sending emails, to spend money on security, which, hey, I agree. That would be great as well. But you have to help bring everybody up at the same time, right? You can't just do it all yourself, particularly when it comes to security. I had received a lot of negative response for this. And it was like that one moment where you think, oh, this is a time where we can double down and explain to people how important this actually is, and that they have the ability to learn from this, and not only just in their work life, but also in their personal life, or maybe for their kids. So you can take what you learned from this phishing test and know that, oh, that looks suspicious. And then you can talk to someone else about it. You can use it in your own personal email. So I basically responded. I spoke to some members of our board, some members of our leadership team, and other leaders within the city county. And I responded not just to that person, but to the entire enterprise, saying that this was essentially the new way that we were going to do things, and that it had lasting effects, not just for the city county to continue on with this campaign, but also in their personal lives. And that if they lean in, there'll be a moment where security is important to everyone, not just the IT team. So it was a little bit of a challenge to send that out, to get that conversation going. But I will tell you that our ability to lead in that moment, me and our team, and sticking to what we thought was the right approach, has been really beneficial down the road. We have so many more supporters within the city county who back our CISO on important matters, on what's necessary. And they lean into, hey, this is really, really important from a security standpoint. We've been able to start a cybersecurity committee. It was really just that point where, hey, we're going to take this seriously from now on, and we need all of you to take it serious as well. And so it was really that great point where we started to change the culture. And it was just that one moment when I look back on that really moved the needle.
Yeah, it's kind of a tipping point, especially as a relatively new person in the role. I imagine you can look back and say, if I had gone the other way with that, things would be very different today, right?
You know, they would be. There certainly wouldn't be the security posture that we have now, which would be a problem, I think, for the residents and for everyone else, including within the city county. But I also think that the amount of respect that we get as being security practitioners and being able to talk about that with the enterprise wouldn't necessarily be there. I don't know if we would have been able to start having serious conversations about what that looks like down the road if we hadn't had that moment. It was really just that moment where if we hadn't done it, what would that have looked like? I can't even begin to tell you, but I feel like it was just that one moment where you had to stick to what you knew and what you thought was right. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out, right? I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Right.
Gone the other way. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine that, it's a lot of those things as leaders that build up over the years that it comes to that one point in time and it all comes together for you, right? All that leadership foundation and doing the right thing and having that confidence to be able to make that kind of culture shift and know that, yeah, this is really the right decision. We're going to double down on it. And,
I mean, you have to
that one point in time to just make that decision. That's a focal point. That's great.
Yeah. So that being said, I am the CIO of Indianapolis and Marion County, and part of that is being the director of an independent, not an independent agency, but an agency within the city county. So it's almost like two different roles there. One is more public and enterprise facing. The other is internal to the city county or to my actual department. That being said, I ended up in this role after having, for the last 3 years, having worked up from an application services manager and the chief technology officer and acting CISO within ISA, the Information Services Agency. It was my pleasure to be this. I never came to the city county to be the CIO. It wasn't on my radar. To be frank, I'd hoped I'd end up being the CISO or CISO, however you want to say it. And I guess I did for a couple of months as an acting, but to be picked and to get the job to run your hometown's technology, it's an awesome experience. It's been my favorite job that I've ever done, the most rewarding job, and also the most challenging job that I've ever had. But I wouldn't have changed that for anything. Prior to that, I worked at IU and IUPUI for about 5 years. There were a couple of different changes in there as far as who we were reporting to and from decentralized IT and decentralized IT. Prior to that, I worked at a managed service provider, mainly with small and medium businesses across Hancock County and Marion County. That was a really interesting experience. And I started my career before that in logistics and transportation. And that was pretty wild because I was basically handed the keys and said, hey, we want to do this, this, and this. Please make it happen. And so it was really nice to get in under the hood. I had a great director there who gave me the leeway to do whatever it is that I needed to do in order to help the technology there. This was back a while ago. We were early adopters of VMware and Veeam, and we did a lot of interesting stuff that I got to get my hands dirty on. So it's been a heck of a career, heck of an experience so far.
Yeah, lots of different experiences and technologies and situations I'm sure you've been in. We usually like to end the show with these couple of questions just to get some perspective. So would love to hear, what's your biggest passion outside of work?
That's really tough for me. There's just so many different things that I'm into. I've certainly gotten into reading lately. I've probably been through about 30 books this year, just crushing through them. Obviously, audiobooks count that, so that's a part of it. I have family, kids 14 and 16 that I spend a lot of time with, from coaching baseball to making sure that their schoolwork and everything gets done. It's a lot of time investment for me. Obviously, I'm really into sports. I can talk to you about the most obscure sports stuff when it comes to the bigger sports, whether it's baseball or football. Colts fan, Pacers fan. I'm an all Indiana fan, except for Notre Dame. I love the school. I love everything about Notre Dame. I've just always been a hater when it comes to the sports teams, but mad respect for them. That's really where my passions are, and it's how I like to spend my time.
Yeah, that's great. And I saw in your bio, you have a great baseball coaching record for youth baseball.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the worst losing records that anyone's ever experienced in recreation baseball. But over 4 seasons, I have enjoyed my time so much, and have kids go from one year to the other and see their growth. We may not have been the best teams, but gosh darn it, we were really competitive and always just barely losing. It felt like we were always in a game, but just to see their confidence be able to handle the wins and the losses with sportsmanship, which can kind of get lost sometimes, has been I don't know, it's been really rewarding. And I wrapped up the rec league career at the local rec league, and I was waterworks, man. I had kids that I'd coached for 3 or 4 years, and it was just like an end of an era. And they're like, oh no, if you go coach somewhere else, coach, we'll come and follow you. So that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, being able to motivate people and help them work through the challenges and losses and still want to be part of it. That's great. That's a good sign.
And the best part about it really is, the funny thing is, you end up being a baseball coach. When I was a kid, I couldn't coach. I only played 1 season, and I spent all my time in right field and picking clovers. I didn't actually do anything. So to end up as a coach who understands baseball, maybe not well, but I do my best. It's been really rewarding and obviously a little ironic.
Yeah, that's great. That's good stuff. Well, next question, rapid fire questions, is coffee chat. So if you could have a coffee with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
This is kind of a hard question for me. I was really trying to think about it and go through people who I'd be really interested in having coffee with. And I have recently just read a book, more on that later potentially, but The Pursuit of Happiness. And it was about how folks had focused on what the pursuit of happiness actually meant in the Constitution. So the Declaration of Independence. It was Benjamin Franklin. That guy had the most interesting career, and he was so involved in civil service. He was involved in politics. He was an inventor. He did all these different things that was just so interesting. Like, I don't even know how he was focused on anything that he was doing, but he always was in it. It seems like he was in it to the end, right? Like, from being an ambassador in France to helping build the foundations of the country. It's just amazing that he had to writing letters as other people to get political opinion to shift. Like, it was just, how do you even begin to have a career like that and to look back on it and look at it from my point of view? I never really thought about Ben Franklin very much growing up, but the more that I read about him, the more interesting he has become. I'd love to be able to sit there, maybe not a coffee, maybe it would be a beer, but it would be interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I know we took a family trip out to Philadelphia a couple of years ago and went to the Ben Franklin Museum, and I'm a big history buff as well, and I learned a good deal about him in the past, but that was a nice adventure going to see some of the stuff in person, and yeah, really cool just getting to know him even better. So it's a really great American figure for sure. So that'd be a great conversation.
Yeah. And it's interesting because he's considered one of the founders, but he also he didn't actually ever become president, right? Like, he wasn't a president. I don't think he was very clear on what he was doing. And I think that's what really separates him for me, is he kind of knew what he wanted to do. And he stayed in his lane, but he still did all these other things as well. So he's always influencing. It was interesting.
Yeah. Really, really interesting figure for sure. Yeah. That's a good choice. I like that one. All right. Last question, our rapid fire questions. What do you want to be remembered for? So we think about this as like, what do you want etched into your tombstone?
So that's a funny question. My first thought on that is like, thanks for coming, but that's pretty morbid on a tombstone. Like, it's not really, someone walks and reads that, right? Like, oh, thanks for coming. Well, isn't that nice that Collin's thanking me for coming and he's passed away? But I did outdoor education in Ohio for a year of my life, including living history. So it was really an interesting time. But one of the mottos of that group was to leave things better, right? So everywhere along my life and my career, I've tried to leave things in a better place than when I first got there, whether it's, returning a shopping cart in the grocery store parking lot to just making slight improvements and making people's lives better. I think that's probably something that I would like to be remembered for. And there is obviously I work in local government, so having a mission and being driven by that and serving others is probably pretty integral to who I am. But I think that's probably what I'd like to be remembered for, is leaving things better than the way that I found them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think I'd like to be part of like Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts motto as well. I remember that from when I was a kid as well. And it stuck with me as well. So it's a good way to think about it, leaving it better than when you got there. So yeah,
maybe that's what it was from. I did do Cub Scouts for the longest time as a kid, and then when my kids were at that age, we did it there as well. But oddly enough, my 14-year-old doesn't remember being a Cub Scout, which I think is really weird. But maybe we gave up to it too soon. I don't know.
Yeah. There's some fun stuff in that Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, right? Pinewood Derby's one I always remember too, so it's always fun.
Yeah,
Love building things.
I remember winning it at my pack and actually going to a mall and having to race at a mall, and you had to be there at a scheduled time to be able to do it. And then you go, and then there's all these cars that are way faster than yours. So you may have won your pack, but like you don't even win your heat. You're not even like, you're like, it's sixth place in your heat. And you're just like, I drove all the way out to this mall for that. So it wasn't nearly as exciting, but yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. Collin, it's been great talking with you. And I'd love to hear some of these stories. And just for our listeners, sort of recapping a few things here with Collin being, CIO at the city of Indianapolis and Marion County, some great background here and a lot of different organizations he's been in, but as he said, really focusing on that public sector. That's been one of the most rewarding things for him and encouragement for all of us to get involved in some way in local government, which I think is great too. It's, as Americans, just understanding how it all works, first of all. A lot of us don't understand all the nuances and how things come together, especially in local government. So that's a great focal point. And really all the things around just, the technology is a focal point for us as CIOs and technologists, but there's all the pieces around it, right? In terms of communication and culture and a lot of those things that come out of it that really impact life outside of work as well. Like you said, being a baseball coach, all the other things that come with that, being a parent, and, love hearing some of those experiences. So with that, it's great. Collin, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. It's great to hear your stories and perspectives on things, and really enjoyed it. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Aaron. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Momentum. If today's conversation sparked ideas or gave you a new way to think about leadership, check out our past episodes and resources. Don't forget to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to connect with me, Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, you'll find the link in the show notes.